Shalom. All praises to Yahweh, Hashem, Yahushua, Hashem, Harakah, Kodash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders, great meal, son of Ruel, and Shalom to the hopeful elect. This is a biblical commentary on the book of Mark, the 6th chapter, and it reads, "And he went out from thence and came into his own country, and his disciples followed him. And when the Sabbath day was come, he began to teach in the synagogue. And many hearing him were astonished, saying, From whence have this man these things? And what wisdom is this which is given unto him, that even such mighty works are wrought by his hands?" Alright? Now, to understand what's being said, you usually would have gone to a teacher, as Paul did. Alright? You had Gamaliel, and even it was mentioned in the book of John that who did teach him the readings, I believe it says. Basically, because it was like I want to say network of people within that realm of teachings, right? You will be known if you was a renowned teacher, but Yahushua come out of nowhere and basically had great authority, right? So reading on, it says is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James and Joseph and Judah and Simon, and are not his sisters here with us? And they were offended at him, alright, because they were like, yo, you're meant to just be a carpenter, man. You ain't meant to, have this kind of wisdom, alright. It says, but Yahushua said unto them, a prophet is not without honor, but in his own country and among his own kin and in his own house, alright. So basically, he basically said, look, when you're within your own household, your own country, your area where you're from, everyone that grew up with you, they basically see you as how they've always known you. They can't see past you growing into being, honored as a prophet, basically. Right, so reading on, it says, and he could there do not mighty work, save that he laid his hands upon a few sick folk and healed them. And he marveled because of their unbelief. And he went round about the villages teaching. Alright, so basically the place where he went to, and this is what you have to understand. This is solely powered by faith. That's why it speaks of in the book of Ephesians 2:8 that the Lord Yahweh gave the gift of faith for them to believe. And faith cometh not of your own work, but by hearing. Okay, so basically you hear the word, you take heed to it. All right, because the Lord opens your ears to have faith onto those words, and then you start. Faith is dead without works. So in order for that faith to live, what do you have to do? You have to start doing works. All right. So in you doing works such as fasting and praying, learning more, keeping the law, statutes, and commandments, that basically aids the growth gives life to your faith. All right. So in the place where Yahushua was in his country, he basically could not. There was no life to be given. Okay, because there was a lack of faith, and that's why he said he could barely heal a lot of people there, because they basically lacked a lot of faith. All right, so it says, and he called unto them the 12 and began to send them forth two and two, and gave them power over unclean spirits. So they were given power over unclean spirits. Okay, so it says, and commanded them that they should take nothing for their journey save a staff only, no scrip, no bread, no money in their purse. Right, so don't take none of your possessions, but be shod with sandals, except from sandals, and not put on two coats. Just go as you are, basically. And this is what he said, and said unto them, in what place soever ye enter into an house, they abide till ye depart from that place. Alright, and whosoever shall not receive you nor hear you, when you depart thence, shake off the dust under your feet for a testimony against them. All right, so that's a proof that the lack of faith in this place is done for. We ain't going back there again. Okay, so we're shaking off the dust, and that's it. It's a wrap. You're X'd out. Verily I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. All right, so basically it's gonna be more. And mind you, Sodom and Gomorrah was a wicked place. It was taken out by fire and brimstone raining from heaven. It's saying that place that don't receive any of the 12 they sent forth will be even worse than that place, man. It will be more, Sodom and Gomorrah will be more tolerable, basically. So the reason it says, and they went out and preached, and men should repent. And they cast out many devils and anointed with oil many that were sick and healed them. All right. So they went and, they did righteous acts through the power of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. All right. And King Herod heard of him, for his name was spread abroad. And he said that John the Baptist was risen from the dead, and therefore mighty works do show forth themselves in him. Others said that it is Elias, and others said that it is a prophet, or as one of the prophets. So back then King Herod is of the lineage of the Edomites, but it shows you that you have the same thing today, but it's just faith is skewed in the sense of everything is fed into the machine of the beast, basically, where people say they don't have a religion, they don't have a belief, but they actually do. They believe in this world, okay, which is a form of faith, all right. But basically back then everyone had a bit more understanding. Jonah is another good example, even though it precedes this. When everyone was in the waves, they basically said, they asked each other what country they were from and what power they believed in. And they went according to that. This is the same thing there. You had like a form of spirituality that everyone was saying, it's John the Baptist risen again. He's been resurrected or regenerated. And then Elias and this, that, and the other. But when Herod heard thereof, he said, it is John whom I beheaded. He is risen from the dead. All right. So he even had faith in the fact that, damn man, John's come back to get at me. For Herod himself had sent forth and laid hold upon John and bound him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife. For when he had married her, for John had said unto Herod, it is not lawful for thee to have thy brother's wife. All right, is adultery. Wherefore Herodias had a quarrel against him and would have killed him, but she could not. All right, because everyone knew that John the Baptist was a holy man. All right, and Herod feared John, knowing that he was a just man and a holy and just and holy. Salakia, just and holy, and observed him. And when he had heard him, he did many things and heard him gladly. All right, so he even was, dealt with him in some form of way. And when the convenient day was come, that Herod on his birthday made a supper to his lords, high captains and chief estates of Galilee. And when the daughter of the said Herodias came in and danced and pleased Herod and them that sat with him, the king said unto the damsel, ask of me whatsoever thou wilt, and I will give it thee. All right. So he basically said, yo, that was a nice dance you did. Whatever you want, I'll give it upon thee. All right. Verse 23, and he sware unto her, whatsoever thou shalt ask of me, I will give it to thee unto the half of my kingdom. Damn. And she went forth and said unto her mother, what shall I ask? And he said, the head of John. And she said, the head of John the Baptist. And she came in straightway with haste unto the king and said, saying, I will thou give me by and by in a charge of the head of John the Baptist. And the king was exceeding sorry. So even he felt bad, man. And he weren't even in jail. But he believed in him somewhat. But he felt, like, damn. Yet for his oath's sake, and for their sakes which sat with him, he would not reject her. And immediately the king sent an executioner and commanded his head to be brought. And he went and beheaded him in the prison, and brought his head in the charger, and gave it to the damsel, and the damsel gave it to her mother. And when his disciples heard of it, they came and took up his corpse and laid it in the tomb. All right. And the apostles gathered themselves together unto Yahushua and told him all things, both what they had done and what they had taught. And he said unto them, come ye yourselves apart into a desert place and rest a while. For there were many coming and going, and they had no leisure so much as to eat. And they departed into a desert place by ship privately. And the people saw them departing, and many knew him, and ran afoot thither out of all cities, and outwent them, and came together unto him. And Yahushua, when he came out, saw much people, and was moved with compassion toward them, because they were as sheep not having a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. Right, so he felt compassion for them, that they'd been lost. Right, they had no guidance. So basically, he began to teach them things through his compassion. He basically began to edify them and give them some form of guidance, a path, right? A gathering under his lead as a shepherd over the flock. And when the day was now far spent, his disciples came unto him and said, this is a desert place, and now the time is far past. Send them away, that they may go into the country round about, and into the villages, and buy themselves bread, for they have nothing to eat. He answered and said unto them, give ye them to eat. And they say unto him, shall we go and buy 200 penny worth of bread, and give them to eat? He saith unto them, how many loaves have ye? Go and see. And they knew, they say 5 and 2 fishes. And they commanded them to make all sit by companies upon green grass. Right, so he said, divide the people into companies, made them sit down. He sat down in ranks by hundreds and by 50s. And when he had taken 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, he looked upon the heaven and blessed and brake the loaves and gave them to his disciples and set before them, and the 2 fishes divided he among them all. Right, so he divided the fish and gave them everything adequately. And they did all eat and were filled. And he took up 12 baskets full of fragments and of fishes. And they that did eat of the loaves were about 5,000 men. So 5,000 men ate of them 5 loaves and 2 fishes, right? And straightway he constrained his disciples to get into the ship, and to go on the other side before unto Bethsaida, while he sent away the people. And when he had sent them away, he departed into a mountain to pray. When even was come, the ship was in the midst of the sea, and he alone on the land. And he saw them toiling in rowing, for the wind was contrary to them. So the wind was going against them, in terms of where they were trying to reach. And about the 4th watch of the night, he cometh unto them, walking upon the sea, and would have passed by them. So he saw them struggling against the wind. He was walking on water onto the other side, and he would have walked past them. All right. It says, but when they saw him walking upon the sea, they supposed it had been a spirit, and cried out. So they thought it must have been some spirit just out there walking in the midst of the sea. For they all saw him and were troubled, and immediately he talked with them, and saith unto them, be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And he went up unto them into the ship, and the wind ceased, and they were so amazed in themselves beyond measure, and wondered, the bugging out basically, for they considered not the miracle of the loaves, for their heart was hardened. So that's crazy, man. So basically, what really kind of, made them understand the greatness of the Lord was him walking on the water, but they didn't even think about the fact that they had 5 loaves and 2 fishes, man. And you have things like that, man. I had an experience where me and the elder in the camp basically saw a chariot, man. And I remember we didn't even talk about that for a year. Like properly really reasoned upon that in a year for a year. And then it's kind of even now it's more kind of one of those things. It's like I think about it from time to time, but it's nothing to consume my mind with. It's more a thing of something that happened. But the main thing is doing this work. You know what I mean? Not to downplay the fact that what I saw, because the chariot was like, up close and personal, and it was moving through different like back and forth basically. But the reason why I'm saying it is that the fact that my heart was hardened for like a space of a year or so to not even consider what was saw, because it was an out there kind of experience. All right. Verse 53. And when they had passed over, they came into the land of Gennesaret and drew to the shore. And when they were came out of the ship straightway, they knew him. So his fame was so great that he just jumped off the ship, and then everyone started running upon him, and ran through the whole region round about, and began to carry about in beds those that were sick, where they heard he was. And whithersoever he entered into villages or cities or country, they laid the sick in the streets, and besought him that they might touch, if it be the border of his garment, and as many as touched him were made whole. Alright? And that pales in contrast to the beginning of this chapter, where it says he went to his own country and he couldn't do nothing there because they had no faith. But when he went somewhere else, man, he said, yo, they believed that they just touched his garment and were whole. And he was laying hands on people and he could barely heal people, man. Showing you the strength and power of faith. So with that, man, I pray you were edified. Say shalom.